Good morning, good morning. Welcome, everybody. It is Maggie Rose Cunningham here for your weekly installment of Magic in Mind, and we are on our fourth and final part of this journey into the magical self of the healer. It is the waning moon, so great time for releasing and letting go and preparing the way for what's to come as well. So, no, it's the natural cycle, the natural dips in and out of energy is what we're working on at the moment. So a little observation for you. I'm a mum, which means that I have done that thing that mums do of gathering together and sharing birth stories, and my story is more terrible than yours, and oh, that sounds awful, but mine is more terrible than yours. Give me a heads up if you've ever done that. But I've also noticed, maybe to a slightly less extent, but still there, is that we can do the same with our own birth stories. If we know our birth stories well, if our parents have shared with us what that birth story was like, and even if your birth wasn't particularly traumatic, and most people find something, don't they? They find something and they go, oh, it's an interesting analogy for my life. A lot of people do. Is human beings, I find us quite intriguing, because we are, we say to ourselves, we are conscious beings, we're so clever, we've evolved magnificently, well done us, isn't this brilliant? But we did so with a price. There was a cost that came with that. So we developed these massive heads, that became really painful and difficult to get out during birth. Our big brains came at a cost. And then we decided we're going to walk on two legs so we can scan the environment more, we can move about more, we can hunt more effectively, lots of things that we can do more effectively. But that also made the birth process more difficult, more challenging. And then to add on to that, a lot of animals, when they're young, are born, they have a relatively short period of time of total vulnerability. For some creatures, it's literally a matter of minutes, particularly prey animals, where you basically, you have to be born on your feet with your eyes open, listening and pay attention and able to be with the herd as quickly as possible. Predator animals, perhaps a little bit less, so they've got the luxury a little bit more time. But, we as a society say our young, generally speaking, our young are ready to be independent from age 18. Or sometimes 21, isn't it? The coming of age, become an adult at 21. That's like years, literally years, where we have, if you think about yourself as a journeying soul, I'm a journeying soul, I've decided that I'm going to be born into this human body, and for a very substantive period of time, I am going to cede all control of my life experience to someone else, to the people that I happen to be born to. And this for me is one of the reasons why the path of the healer becomes incredibly important through the course of in our society. And why asking the question of what wholeness becomes incredibly important, because when the baby is born and they are totally dependent, does that mean they aren't whole? Lots of you might have, you might have views. It tends to be that in healing communities, spiritual communities, we do have views about the medicalization of birth, almost as if birth itself is a disease, a problem. It's problematized and it's made difficult, and a lot of those stories of this happened or that happened come from that experience and that process. That the birth has become something that happens in hospital. And I'm not making any judgment that way, one way or the other. I had one of my children in hospital, and I was incredibly glad that I did, and I had the other by accident at home, and I was incredibly glad that happened as well. I was in the right place at the right time for both of them. So it's not about that, but it's just about noticing the way in which what we think about healing, and the way that we associate it with disease or discomfort, and that there's a problem that needs to be fixed. So what I want to invite you in today, while we're looking at the healer, is to feel into that sense of wholeness. We have one planetary movement to look at in our in terms of the energetics of what's available to us at the moment. So Tia's chariot moves today. So Tia is the Roman equivalent of Mars, moves today from Gibo, the rune of partnership, into Wunyo, the rune of joyfulness and belonging and wild ecstasy. And it really does invite us into wholeness, this rune. And what Tia is saying, he says, claim your wholeness no matter what. So this idea that if a baby is born into the world and is it a being that is entirely dependent on others and runs a very, very high risk of experiencing wounding and trauma, no matter how wonderful their families might be, and not all of us have wonderful families, and yet we can still say that baby is born whole, and this is part of the wholeness of life, then we have to accept wounding as being part of that wholeness. I'm going to do a little bit of a play with that and see what you think about that. It'd be really interesting to hear your thoughts on that. The word heal and the word whole come from the same common root, the Proto-Germanic hjarlen. I can see, is it someone say they've got Hagelas today, or was Carol? So you've got Hagelas there. So I will come back and ask you for your runes later when we get onto that bit, when we get onto our, let's call it the stay and play part of the broadcast. But what are your thoughts about the healer and the path of the healer? I think this can be very challenging for us as healers in the world. First of all, because we have quite a narrow view of what healing might mean at the present time. I think it's broadening out, but it can be very narrow. And secondly, to hold the space for someone where you say, I understand and I am with you in a compassionate, empathic place for helping you with a wounding or a trauma or something difficult that you are not enjoying. We go to a healer when we feel like everything is not okay, and yet to be working on the basis that even when you are in that place, you are still whole. How does the healer navigate that space and help their clients to navigate that space, or how do we as people who are looking to increase our tools of self-healing, how do we navigate that and say, okay, I feel crap right now, but I still follow Tia's guidance, and I say I will claim my wholeness no matter what. Michelle's saying that reminds me of the wounded healer of Western astrology. Absolutely, Michelle. I've been thinking about this. I want to do a piece later on. I can feel it coming, maybe when we go through the next cycle with the healer self, because we do have this very strong archetype of the wounded healer who is able to stand in compassion with somebody else because they've been through that journey themselves. And we're going to be talking about wholeness processes in a moment. I'm also wondering, though, about whether in our society we need to recognize more the wounding healer, that it is still possible to be someone who offers healing, and to recognize that we have at sometimes been the instrument of wounding for others. I think it's one of the things that I think our society is very difficult. We have this sort of ideas of perfection in healing spaces. We can have the ideas of being I'm a being of light. I'm a being who is I'm seeking to be perfect. I never do anything wrong, and it's very attractive in our society, which is very, very competitive. If we want to be a good person, it means that we have to do everything good, and we have to do everything right, and we have to never ever wound anyone ever, or that makes us a terrible, bad person. Now, I'm saying that definitely from personal experience. This is something that I spent years working on, was the absolute horror of wounding somebody else. It was so intense that it was stopping me from doing anything in my life. So I think absolutely the concept of the wounded healer is incredibly important, and almost like the first step on the healing journey. I talked about it in the blog, I think last week. But I do think also that at some point we're going to have to start to claim that the wounding healer, and saying that everyone who heals will at some point have wounded, and that's okay. How far that's okay, it's another matter. But really interesting concept. Thank you, Michelle, for bringing that. Erica said, great wisdom of claiming our wholeness no matter what. Yes, absolutely. My own cancer healing journey teaches me that my body is in need of healing. My higher self is already always whole. That is just, I love that, Erica. That's beautiful. And it's that ability to hold two truths at the same time and recognize we are complex beings is just wonderful. Thank you, Michelle. We can have the best of intentions and still do some wounding. Yes, we can. And if you think about that birth story that I just gave you, if we believe that that we've chosen to be here, and that the way that humanity has developed and evolved, that there was an intention behind that, we have to believe that we have chosen for ourselves a life journey that includes the initiation of birth and childhood as an experience that can bring, like profound, beautiful, amazing, but also deeply uncomfortable, with as almost a guarantee of some form of trauma or wounding at some point in our life journey, as I believe a process of becoming more whole. Not that we're not whole at the beginning, but that process of learning and evolving and growing, that we require that. And if we require that, we require someone to offer that to us. Sue says, I feel that we need to see that that in this life we all will be wounded and we will all need healing at some point. Yeah. And people who say, I've never been wounded, or stiff upper lip, it didn't matter that I was wounded. It doesn't matter. I keep going anyway. That's a wounding in itself, isn't it? That ability to what's the word I'm looking for? Believing that you aren't deserving enough of healing and care. Yeah, and Candice reminds me how a surgeon can't heal without wounding first with a scalpel. Yes, absolutely, Candice. Or homeopathic medicine that in large doses, but poison in small doses heals. Yes, all of these things, so important for the healer. So I'm going to talk a little bit about these processes that I've been feeling into that I think are important in terms of thinking about the role of the healer and how it embodies more than our society necessarily gives it credit for. So in order to be born into this world, and have an experience where we bond with other people, and we bond with other people, we want that, don't we? We want that connection. And we talk so much about love, about the experience of loving and being loved, of opening ourselves to love. But inherent within that, in the human realm, is the concept then of loss, the experience of loss. Now, unless you are someone who happens to be like the first in their own community to pass on, and therefore never experiences loss, it's pretty much another guarantee, that with love comes loss. I've been talking a little bit about parenthood there, and I'm very aware this desire to become a parent, and then you hold this little person in your arms and you think, I am whole right now, totally whole right now, and then chasing immediately after it is, what if something happens? What if something happens to this tiny, vulnerable person who has put themselves in my care for the next 18 years? Oh! And you're not expecting that level of fear. It's huge. But it's would you give that up and not have the love that promoted that in the first place? You wouldn't, That ability to feel is part of what it means to be human. Now, related to, but a little bit different, another cycle that healers work with, helping people to open to love, particularly if they experience so much loss that they go, wow, I just don't want any more love, thanks very much, it's too painful. Right, to be able to open back up to the cycle of love and loss is the cycle of growth and grief. And we're experiencing that all of the time. Every time we move from, to go through a rite of passage. The rite of passage of growing from being a child into being an adult, from being an adult into being an elder. These are rites of passage. And if we want to grow and step fully into that, we need to be able to grieve. And grief is not just a process of letting go, I don't think. I think it's also a process of recognizing what's precious within that. Now, we talk about the lunar cycle and we follow the lunar cycle. And I was thinking about this in terms of this idea of growth and grief. That if we look at the full moon, I can use that as quite a good analogy of the way that our society presents the human experience at this point. That childhood is a preparation for adulthood, which is when you are in your full moon phase and you are the most productive and you are creating stuff for society and you are paying your tax and you are purchasing stuff and you are doing all of the things. And that's the fullness bit, and I'm deliberately not saying wholeness here. And then after that it's a decline. That's it, it's just a decline. Now, I'm fairly certain that Manny, the moon, would say, that is ridiculous. I am just as whole when I'm in my new moon phase as I am in my full moon phase and I am in my waning moon phase. You know, those moments where we grow into our next phase and where we grieve for the other phase are incredibly important. Our society seems to say, okay, and then childhood's over, and you can't have any more of the fun stuff, and you're going to leave behind a lot of the magical self was left behind in childhood, isn't it? Because it's not part of that paradigm of the adult. You know. And yeah, healers work with this process as well. They work all of the time with people to say, right, what needs to be released in order for the room to be made for the next thing, in order for you to grow into your next flowering is the way that I like to see it. Next flowering. Another piece for healers is collaboration and conflict. Now, we come onto this earth not to have a journey on our own where we never speak to anybody else or connect with anybody else and just do all of the stuff ourselves, no matter how much we might be in the cult of the individual right now. We come to partner, to connect, to collaborate. But the downside of that is, I'm going to say the downside and then I'm going to qualify it, is conflict. That there's going to come a point where you disagree, particularly if you're on the place where I'm on the love journey and I don't want to lose you, so I want to control you. Or I'm on the growth journey and I need to separate from you now, and I need to grieve for that and you need to grieve for that because our relationship is moving on to another bit. Or we recognise that I value something and you don't, and how is that going to work? And we move into conflict. But what we tend to do in our society is that we conflate conflict and violence, which is not the way that it needs to be. It is perfectly possible to be in conflict creatively as a process of growth into the next iteration of the next collaboration. And that again is the space of the healer to do that mediation work and to do that helping work. And we're in the hall of Forseti at the moment. He's a wonderful mediator. He's got his healer's hat on in that sense. So again, healers inhabit that space. How do we not say we must avoid conflict, we must avoid loss, we must avoid grief, and we must avoid conflict at all costs because we only want the love and the growth and the collaboration? And the Northern tradition, and I think most other spiritual traditions, teach us that that's not possible. The loss is part of the love, the grief is part of the growth, the conflict is part of the collaboration. And it's being able to recognise that and move into that and claim all of those things as what it means to be wholeness. Two more I'm going to offer here. So I'm going to offer the one that's probably the most obvious in our society right now. The realm of the healer is the realm of pleasure and pain. And I think this is a really difficult space for us because when we are in pain, claiming our wholeness no matter what is not an easy place to be. Because no, when the pain is over, then I'll claim my wholeness. Thank you very much. And do I want to be fully in my body? No, I do not. I want to exit my body as quickly as humanly possible. And I mean that in for a lot of us as energy workers, it is perfectly possible for us to just ever so slightly move our energy body out of our bodies. Ever had an out-of-body experience when you've been ill or in pain? I know that for me is the one where I've had the most spontaneous ones. It becomes incredibly easy to do that. Because you don't want to be in your physical body when it's in that much pain. So this place of pain is also a very difficult one. It's similar to conflict and violence. It's saying there are going to be some aspects of pain that we want to work with and the healer will want to work with to help us through. Our society tends to say, avoid the pain, avoid the pain, avoid the pain. Let's just move into the pleasure. That's what we want. We want the pleasure, the pleasure, the pleasure, the pleasure, the pleasure. But obviously there are different types of pain. There is this... like the pain of giving birth, the pain of I've just burnt my hand on something because I've had it too close to the fire and I'm going to learn from that. There are many ways in which pain is designed by the body to be a healthy response to something that you need to do something about. Obviously, sometimes it goes very wrong. But our society has become one of, the most important thing is to step into pleasure, stay in pleasure and not experience the pain. And that's what we want to do. And it's not always the right way to manage that, and to say actually the experiences of pain can also be experiences of profound pleasure because suddenly we understand the beauty of life. One of the most profound experiences of beauty and oneness and wholeness that I had was at a moment, probably one of the lowest moments in my life, when I was sitting in a chair at my parents' house. I had lost my home, I'd lost my partner, I'd lost my job. I was in continual agonizing pain. The only thing that I was looking forward to was the next set of painkillers. Pain in my arms, pain in my legs, all of my joints. It was just horrific. And I remember looking at this rose out of the window of my parents' house, and it was a bush that had been flowering since I was a child. And I just looked at it, and it was like blissful. I can't describe how blissful it was to be absolutely nothing else mattered in that moment. Nothing else mattered in that moment. And I still hold on to that. And obviously I was able to make the journey back into physically being able in such a wonderful place. And I give gratitude for that every day. That I'm not in that place now. And if I hadn't had that experience, I wouldn't know how blessed I am right now. So these things come too. But I think our society can fixate on that as being the primary role of the healer when it actually has others. And the final wholeness process, and there may well be more, let me know if you think that there might be some other wholeness process that I'm missing here, is wisdom and wounding, which takes me back to the idea that we were talking at the beginning of if we believe, if we take on board, for a moment, play with it, the belief that we chose to be born in these human bodies, in this human form, and to have the experience of helplessness from birth all the way through until whatever point it was that you felt, sometimes many of us never feel entirely like we are, I'm free to do everything. That's a sort of bit of a myth anyway, isn't it? Because we want growth and we want collaboration, we want all of those other things, So we need other people to do that. But to have an experience of total helplessness, which opens us to wounding, and to recognise that we can receive through that process wisdom. That the journey of if we go back to the moon, that journey of becoming an elder is a journey of wisdom finding. Through that process of living, through that process of life. Maggie says, I don't feel like an adult at all. I don't feel like an adult at all either, Maggie. I remember thinking when I was a child that all adults knew everything, that they had it all sussed and it was all going to be fine. You want that. You want to believe that as a child, don't you? And so I had to believe for a longest period of time, I believed, well, therefore, because I don't have it sussed, I don't know everything. I don't know exactly the right thing to do in the right moment in order to create this, the world that I want to see. Therefore, I can't be an adult. I found that quite interesting. I still find adult a weird term. I think my mum said to me once, she said, well, you're not an adult because you don't like coffee. I don't like coffee. I'm never going to like coffee, so I'm not going to become an adult when that's fine. But doesn't mean I haven't experienced the full moon phase. I do wonder sometimes whether adulthood is not a moment, but rather the completion of a cycle, I complete this cycle, I experience this learning, and I internalize it, and I find the elder within capable of dealing with that, and then I move on to the next lesson within that. I go, oh, I might have achieved some form of adulthood, in this realm, and have something to offer to the world, but there's so many areas where I haven't. Quite like the idea of, instead of looking at everyone and saying, well, that's a child and that's an adult, and actually looking at the world and going, well, I wonder what adulting wisdom this person has, and what adulting wisdom this person has, and it might be different, and actually, that person, they're like really good at managing their money. I was watching somebody talking yesterday and was saying, why is it that we don't talk about bank statements and interest rates and tax at school? Why isn't that just part of the curriculum? I was like, yeah, it's ridiculous. It should be part of the curriculum. Totally should. People who know that stuff, they have an initiation into adulting that some of us might need. So perhaps it's not about being an adult. It's about becoming an adult in various different parts of life. Helen's saying, love the analogy of the moon phase and lifespan. So many connections to the moon for me at the moment. Yeah. It's a really lovely, we had the full moon in Bacano. It's a really sort of profound, deepening time, very feminine energy combining with the moon in the northern tradition. The moon is masculine. Well, I shouldn't say the moon is masculine. The charioteer, the guardian of the moon is masculine, Mani. often think that he's like this partnering of the masculine and the feminine energy. I really like so much when we follow the lunar cycle that helps us. And Eric says it's just another form of wholeness and we give it meaning or not. Yeah, absolutely. So those are the processes that I'm inviting you to feel into when thinking about this question. How can I claim my wholeness? How can I claim my wholeness through this week? And what might that mean in terms of my experience of love and loss or growth and grief? What might I need to release in order to be more fully in my wholeness at this time is the question I want to ask you at this point. So what some of the things that you can do around that through the course of this week are naming love and naming the fear of loss that can come with it. You know, I mentioned to you that experience that I had of like being in terrible pain and recognizing that it took me a long time to have gratitude for my body after that point. And I realized that it was because I was afraid of that. I was afraid of the power that my body had to offer like pain to me. And it took me a long time to move through that and to say, okay, I love my body as it is, and that makes me, there is a fear there that I might lose that, and that's okay too. And I love that. It was I'm not explaining that very, very well, but it was this process of going, okay, as long as I am afraid of the loss, I can't feel into the love. You know? So naming the love, naming the loss. In terms of conflict, naming inner conflict so that you can release that, so that you can move more fully into that space of collaboration. Naming am I afraid of the disagreement, or am I afraid of conflict bringing with it violence? And I don't know if it means physical violence. That could be verbal violence, or an experience of damage being done to a relationship. Now, what is it I'm actually afraid of when I think about conflict? What are my woundings? What wisdom have my woundings offered to me? How can I release the pain of the old wounds and honor the wisdom of the scars that they have left me with? These are questions that you can ask yourself. And also naming your desires. You know? However selfish they might feel, and I think that's important. This is part of that. You know, we're talking about freedom. You know, it's that we've been talking about a pathway almost of surrender, or not having control and being wounded by that process. And for some of us, that can mean that we become so afraid, particularly if we've experienced substantial wounding, substantial trauma through the course of our lives. It can become incredibly painful to then name our desires, because it feels as if I reach out for love again, I'm immediately going to move into loss. If I reach out for growth again, I'm immediately going to go into grief. If I reach out for collaboration again, I'm going to immediately experience the violence of conflict. If I reach out for further wisdom again, for learning out in my community, I am immediately opening myself up to wisdom. And if I reach out for pleasure, try something different, I try something new, I'm immediately opening myself up to the possibility of pain. And being able to move through that, you know, to release those old the signals that our body gives us and says, this has happened in the past, but actually remembering, yeah, but you also had the love. You know, you also had the fabulous, young, beautiful body. You had all of these things. No, they haven't been taken away from you, because they're still with you. I remember my little boy. I'm going to stop in a minute. We're going to go to planetary movement. So have your runes ready so we can look at the runes that you've got through the course of this week. I remember my son saying to me he was going to have his 4th birthday, and he started to cry. And I said, "Why are you crying?" He said, "I don't want to lose my 3. I'm going to be 4, and then I'm never going to be 3 again, and I like being 3, and I don't want to lose it." Oh, it was so tragic. It was awful. And I said to him, "You can never lose your 3. No, you can never lose your 3. You still have your 3. You just have your 4 as well. You've got your 0, you've got your 1, you've got your 2, you've got your 3, and now you've got your 4. You know, we looked at the little Russian dolls. It's like, that's what you're doing. You're growing another layer, but your 3-year-old is still inside you. No, it's that piece. It's that recognition that we carry that our scars are the beauty of our life experience written upon our physical beings. And if we imagine that as being our spirits as well, that our experiences are being written into us all of the time, that's the place of the healer. That's the place that the healer works with. Okay, so let's have a look and see. I'm going to see if I can scroll up to grab the runes that people have already shared. We're actually going to be looking at 7 runes today, 7 spirit guide runes that have come forward for this week to play with. That's because Tewaz, sneaky Tewaz, got in twice over the last 3 weeks, which means that we've got 7 runes to play with. But let me have a look and see what other people have got first. And you can also, if I don't say your rune, so Carol's got Hourglass, just pop it in the chat box again, and I will look at them. Michelle has got Gibo. Chen has got Thala. So the problem for me is, as I'm doing this, is that the chat flicks backwards and forwards, so that when somebody types, then I lose the space. Sue has got Northis. Now, I don't do readings for everybody, but what I will do is I will feel into them, and we will see what comes up. Sometimes there's a, like a specific bit there. Candice has got Ewaz. Darcy's got Tewaz. And Darcy says, I love being 3 and remember it well. You're right. You'll never lose your 3. I'm 58 and you still remember. This is true, isn't it? I also think, I know that a lot of people are highly sensitive in this group. It doesn't always come with, it doesn't mean that, you're only magical if you're highly sensitive. Absolutely not. But there are a lot of people who are highly sensitive in this community. And we are known for having very, very strong memories. Very, very strong memories. And quite visceral ones as well. Our lived experiences live very deep inside us. When we look into the sage, which we're going to be looking at in November, we'll be looking at the role of the sage in terms of being a story keeper for our communities as well. It's important. I know that there are a number of my friends, 3-year-olds, who are still living in me, and we collaborate on that remembering piece. So great, thank you for sharing your runes. I will go through the 7 that we're going to work with, and then we'll have a look and feel into what else you have got. So the runes that we are working with today, where have my runes gone? They came in pairs a little bit. They came in pairs, and then Ingu's came along at the end. So we're going to look at Thurisaz and Wunyo as a pair. I always find these really interesting, these 2 runes, because they feel very different to each other in many ways. Energetically, they can feel very different, and yet their shapes are quite similar. So it was fun to me that they presented themselves in pairs today. So I'm going to do Wunyo first, because we have that one planetary movement that we're working on, which is Tia's chariot in Wunyo. So Wunyo is inviting us to claim that wholeness piece. It is a rune of joy, of ecstasy, of experiencing all that life has to offer, and of claiming our wholeness, and saying, I need to go out for a walk into the world, or I need to write my experience down as poetry, or I have this just desire to taste the biscuits that my grandmother used to make. I'm going to go and find the recipe and I'm going to make them. When you knows those things, it says this is a healing path. Hi, it's very lovely to see you. I can see that you've got Northers as well. Thank you. Just keep them coming if you come new. So we've got 2 of you with Northers there, haven't we? Because Sue has got that as well. And yeah, there's a lightness about Wunyo, a sort of a claiming. So it's interesting that you've got the Northers rune there. What I'm going to say with the Northers rune, because I just, while we're on it, and it's sort of chatting to the Wunyo rune, is the Northers rune is this deep knowing. It's like a stomach level knowing of, I need to do this, this needs to happen, this needs to occur. It's felt very much in the body. It's that experience in the body of what my needs are, or when we feel it externally to us, it can be almost the call of fate, the call of the Nornir saying, this way, we need you to do this or to achieve that. So it's like a burning fire, which can feel a little bit uncomfortable until we claim that space for ourselves. We were talking about the rite of the passage of pleasure and pain. And Northis would be one of those runes. Kinas would be one of those runes, a little bit as well. That sense of going, okay, which way do I need to move? There is the pain in the world. What can I do in order to assist? Is the Northis rune. Or where is the pain inside me where something is wrong? And how can I move into pleasure? How can I tend to my needs more? So that's the Northis rune. Whereas the Wunyo rune has a lightness to it. It comes before Northis. In the Elder Futhark, it comes earlier. So you can think about it as being the childhood phase. So whereas Northis will say, you have been ignoring this for a long time. You know? Wunyo is at the point where we're just not ignoring it. You know, because we just do the thing that we love. We do it. You know, there's time to do it. It's the rune of what we would love to give to every single child in the world. If you could click your fingers right now and give the life that you would want to every child in the world, you know, feel the energy that rises up in you when you think about that, when you think about clean water and safety and an education and people who love them, you know, and toys to play with. You know, just do that. And Wunyo is right there, you know? And then say, if I want to be that person who can give those things to other people, I need to give those things to myself, okay? That's the first step. It's not the only step, but it's the first step. So that's where the Wunyo rune is taking. Claim your wholeness no matter what, says Tia. So this contrasts with the Thurisaz rune. So the Thurisaz rune and the Wunyo rune, if you have a look at their shapes, you can see how similar they are. No, really interesting in terms of their similarities. And it's, when you work with your runes, if you come onto awaken and things like that, you can play with this idea of, you know, what it means that the energy of Wunyo is high and like this like rotating weather veins of going, which way do I go? And Thurisaz is a sort of more balanced, a little bit deeper energy. It's felt again deeper in the body. Wunyo can often feel a little bit higher in the body. It's the heart expanding out and giving. Thurisaz is also a heart rune, but it's a deep, passionate heart rune. And it's that time when, you know, talking about collaboration and conflict. Yeah, there's my love. I am feeling for every child that I want to bring out into the world, and I've done my piece around offering that into the world, and I've gone out and I've said, why isn't it this way? Why isn't it that way? It should be this way, shouldn't it? And the Wunyo rune is calling me that way, or the Northis rune starts to burn, and it says, this is not good. And the Thurisaz rune says, not on my watch. Do you think that I don't know what can happen? Do you think I don't know how awful human beings can be to each other? Do you think I don't know the experiences that children in this world are having right now? And it brings a different energy to that. It says, I am not afraid of conflict. I'm not afraid to stand up. I'm not afraid to be shouted at for my beliefs or told that I'm wrong. All of those things. Thurisaz owns those pieces. So this is what I was a little bit about what I was talking about in terms of the times when we can be afraid of being the wounder, and therefore we don't say our truth because we think it might be uncomfortable for somebody else. But if your truth comes from the place of the heart, which is found in both Wunyo and Thurisaz, if it comes from there and it needs to be said, Thurisaz is the strength to do that. You know? To say, it's worth it. You know, it's worth it to do that, and I am not afraid of the conflict. And that does not mean that I am going to step into the space of violence. And this is part of the finding of the wisdom of life, isn't it? Is how do I stand in my power and do so, and perhaps wound, but perhaps I'm wounding in order to heal. So those two runes wanted to come together. Those little contrasts together. Then we have Iwaz and Perthro. So they came together. They're next to each other in the rune row. And I often think about them as being, so here's Iwaz. We've got the Iwaz rune. So this is the world tree, the rune of the world tree, the rune of the staff, the pillar, sort of central rooted pillar down into the earth. Darcy, you're saying Thurisaz and Wunyo together is like righteous anger. Potentially. I was given an example there, I suppose, of the way in which they might express. But that was in the context of thinking about, you know, because as I was speaking, that was what I was given was the vision of looking at something that I disagree with in the world, namely that children should not have enough water, or they should live in places of conflict or violence, or be exposed to diseases that we can easily fix. You know, those are the things that bring my Thurisaz self up. And and my Wunyo self holds on to the positive, the possibility. So yes, you can use those two runes together to help to hold yourself in a space where you're able to offer your craft, channel that righteous anger into change and transformation. You could work with those two together. They don't necessarily mean that, but you can work with them as guides and tools to support you with that. Iwa's rune here, we've got our lovely staff, and it's working with the Perthrow rune, so they've come together to support as a team. Here's the Perthrow rune. So the Perthrow rune represents weird, it represents joy. There's a fulfillment piece as well that comes with the Wunyo. It's like another wave of Wunyo sort of crashing down, and there's an interesting, if you think about it in that way, that we've got the rootedness and the depth of Iwa, sort of that stability of Iwas with the world tree, and then you've got the possibility of Perthrow coming. When you put these runes together, and you can see them as being like the tree and the well of weird. So there we go. The well of weird is underneath. What am I doing there? There we go. Come on, stop being wonky. We've got the tree, and then we've got the well of weird at the base of the tree there. And in the northern mythology, every day the waters of weird, they come up and they are like dew. They evaporate upwards and then they become as dew, and they then trickle back down the world tree, and they offer healing in that sense. And this is the work of the healer, the daily work of the healer. You know, self-healing, healing of others, moving into love, moving into growth, moving into collaboration, doing the thing. And then every now and then the well of weird floods and the waters come gushing upwards. They come all the way up. And at that point, the Iwas rune becomes a rune of protection. And it's said that humans come and they shelter in the arms of the world tree while the waters come and they clear away the old. And then the worlds are reborn and life starts again. And that is also the role of the healer, isn't it? Sometimes to be the flood, to be the cleansing, to be the renewal in that sense, and to offer the place of safety and support with the Iwas rune as well. So it's this interplay between the energies of stability and uncertainty that comes through this, and the way that we navigate those. And so if you have received one of those runes, you might want to have a little play with both of them and look at those cycles of growth and grief, for example, and so, well, how do they work together? Think about the growth of the world tree. It's interesting, if you do that, it becomes the Lagu's rune, the rune of water, and the rune of growth and fertility. Moving up becomes the Iwas rune. Oh, I'm just going to keep doing that because I love it. Stop it, Maggie. And it creates this rooted, solid place of wholeness and stability. But without the waters of change that keep on flowing upwards, obviously the tree will eventually die. It needs that. It needs water. It needs life. It needs sustenance to keep it growing. If we are not growing, if we're not moving into love, if we're not moving into collaboration, if we're not moving into wisdom, if we're not moving into pleasure, and if we are not therefore accepting all of the other things, the loss and the grief and the conflict and the wounding and the pain, like all of those things at the same time, we're not living. Right? And that's what these two runes say. So, yeah, I was having fun there with my runes. I'm going to put them down. I'm going to stop doing that. So, those are our two second pair of runes that wanted to partner with us. The final pair of runes that wanted to come out together, you see, somebody was asking me about like bind runes. So, this is a little bit of a mini bind runes class. We're workshopping runes that work together and how you can work with them. A bind rune is two runes that are brought together, and their energies are, unique themselves, and then when they come together, they create a unique resonance as well, which can be used for all sorts of different purposes, as we just explored with those two. So we've got the Dargaz rune here, the rune of the day. You can see it looks a bit like a two pointed capital D's looking at each other. Its name literally means day. And then it's the partner rune that wanted to come and play. It was the Suelo rune. Here we go, Suelo rune, the rune of the sun. So you can see why. Oh, interesting that they came together. So you've got the sudden realization of the day, the daylight that we can see and experience pretty much always, even if we can't see the sun. Now, obviously, there are parts of the hemisphere where it's a very short period of time where these two parts of the partnership and union between day and night are not in balance necessarily. But there's always a moment of transition in the centre, and there is an inherent balance through the course of time. And this is where the Darga's rune and the Suelo rune differ. So the Darga's rune is the experience of the moment in its fullness right now. You know, I'm stepping into this moment right now. I'm entirely present. This is how I am experiencing the balance of loss and love right now. You know, which obviously it might be that one is feeling bigger and one is feeling smaller. You know, just as I said, with the balance of day and night changes all of the time for us. And we can say, oh, but they're both still present. They're always still present, you know, in that moment. They are inherent in each other. They're like the seeds of each other. You can't have one without the other. You can't experience loss unless you have experienced love of some sort. You know? So that's what the Darga's rune says, and it's right, you know, right in the moment. This is what I'm feeling. It's in my face. The Suelo rune is the rune of the sun that is moving continually, and it's the promise of that growth, and it's that ability to say, okay, I am feeling myself on a journey right now. It offers the experience of the past and the possibility of the future in the context of the present moment, and says, what am I moving towards? You know, what am I moving towards right now? It says, you know, if I'm experiencing just the loss, how can I open more fully to love? Where does my heart, again, Suelo is another great heart rune to work with. It's also brilliant for the solar plexus, so it connects us with our power and our sense of confidence in self and knowing the direction of travel that we need to go in. The Suelo rune says, well, how can I do that? How can I move more fully into that? Conversely, it also says, have I been traveling almost like too long on the journey of love, or the journey of growth, or the journey of collaboration, and I am pushing away the other parts of that cycle of wholeness? You know, we can get to the point where we love so much that we lose ourselves. You know, and it might be, oh, you know, what have I lost through this process of loving so deeply another? You know, it invites us into that place. It invites us into, I've been on a cycle of growth for so long now. I've been pushing and pushing and pushing. What haven't I allowed space to grieve for that is going to be necessary for the next cycle? So Suelo says, you know, we have to complete the cycle. The sun has to continue her journey round and round and round, you know, however, whatever's happening in the day. So those two runes came forward as partners. And the final rune that wanted to come out to play before I check people's personal runes that they've got was the Ingu's rune. And it wanted to come and basically just summarize a little bit of what we have been saying in this session today. So Ingus is the rune of the seed. It's also the rune of the divine hero, often considered to be a masculine energy rune, but it is the rune of gestation. So it is both, you know, it is the womb that contains and holds and nurtures, and the seed within. So it's, you know, it's got the feminine in there too. It's just that we often think about it in terms of the journey. I'd actually taken it out already. I don't know why I'm flicking through my cards because I had it in front of me all the time. There we go. So here's our Ingu seed. And the Ingu seed is the reminder that the seed can stay in the earth, dormant, lying beneath the earth, experiencing only what is in its current sphere of knowledge. You know, this is all that I am. This is all that I know. I am in there. I'm not growing. I'm not loving. I'm not collaborating. I'm not increasing my wisdom. And I'm not experiencing the pleasure of any of those things. But I'm under the ground and I'm waiting. Yeah? And then life invites the seed to play. It says, spring's coming. There's some water. And there's some nutrients in the soil here. This is a good time. And the seed cracks itself open. It has this moment, this sort of explosive moment of, I'm going to use all of that energy, all of my wholeness, all of what I am, in order to transform myself into something else, and to reach out and to use that energy that is mine. And I'm going to trust the world that if I put down my roots below and I reach out above, that then I'm going to start to receive more stuff in. And as I do that, that seed of what I was is going to expand out, and eventually you won't be able to see it at all. I will be something completely different. Is the seed more whole as the seed, or as the shoot, or as the great tree, or as the tree that is releasing its seeds back down to the earth? No. The only way in which it could not be whole would be if it just stopped. You know, if it just sort of stopped and didn't fulfill its nature as a seed, became something else, you know, became compost. You know, that's sort of what we've been talking about through the course of this session with our Ingu's rune there. So let's have a look at which runes we've got for people. So Carol, you've got the Hagalaz rune. So again, another seed rune. But whereas the Ingu's rune, its potential comes from inside and then it splits itself open. The Hagalaz rune experiences that cracking through its what's the word I'm looking for? Interaction with the world outside itself. So it sort of needs the conflict piece in order to move into growth, or in order to move into collaboration. So it says, where are those growth opportunities for you outside yourself? We've done Northes. Sue, I can see that you need to leave. I know that you've mentioned, well, we've done Northes anyway, haven't we? So that's fine. Good. Lovely to see you. Take good care. Michelle, with your Gibo rune. Was there anything that Gibo wants to give? I think it's just it's a slightly different iteration of the Suelo energy. So it's talking about that give and receive, that balance. Sort of inviting a balance in there a little bit. I don't think it wants to offer anything else other than to say that that piece, you know, the piece that I was talking about with the Dargaz rune, the Suelo rune, that the Gibo rune could have been a rune that would come and support us in looking at that partnership as well. There's something there around fairness for me. I would maybe go and look at the themes that we've talked about, love and loss and grief and growth, in the context of fairness. Just see if there's any wounds left in there where pain needs to be released, so that you can feel into the wisdom of that and the knowing of that. Chen, you've got your Athala rune. Interesting how they come in this sort of succession, because Athala is again, if you feel into the Iwaz rune, it can be that sort of fixed piece. It's that shared story and the legacy piece. I think that for the Athala rune here, it is that sometimes we can get that itchy feet, can't we, towards moving forwards. I'm feeling the Radar rune coming and sort of acting like a little partner for the Athala rune, and it's the difference between experiencing the home as being the place where we are rooted and fixed, and experiencing the road as being the place where we are rooted and fixed, and that these are different states of being. We can be totally at home in the wanderer self, but it's almost like there's a claiming of power that's needed from the Athala rune before the road can then call, because we need to carry that wisdom with us and not leave it behind us. You know, we need to have done that claiming piece. I think that's what the Athala rune is asking. Candice, you've got your Ewaz rune there. So this is the, I would say that this is the conflict and collaboration piece for you. That's feeling into, looking at where they offer the healing journey for you there. And Darcy, you've got the Tewaz rune. So obviously Tear's been very strong and looking at that claiming of wholeness, that standing in wholeness. So I'm just going to finish with a reminder, because we've got the Tear's chariot rune is so strong this week. It's just that reminder that if we are feeling like, oh, how can I feel whole as I am now, or how can I see the possibility of wholeness in this situation, whether it's for myself or for somebody else, that Tear is there to guide us with that, and to say that sometimes the solutions are not the most obvious ones. Tear claims his wholeness by sacrificing who he is in very dramatic ways. And it's sort of looking at that and saying what possibilities might be there that are the I'm reading Lemony Snicket at the moment to my son, and they're talking about the road less travelled. You know, it's like, what's the road less travelled? What can I do that using your seership skill, maybe that's why it's coming in, using your seership skill to say, okay, what other possibilities are out there for claiming wholeness that might not be the most obvious ones? We will be working on the path of the seer in our next cycle. Look out for your newsletter. If you're not signed up to the newsletter, make sure that you're signed up to the newsletter, because we've got lots planned through the course of the month of the seer, including some lovely opportunities to come and do some deep dive work into the seer. So I'm looking forward to that. And Shani was saying, I was just writing a piece about feeling at home on the road. Wonderful. So maybe Athala is just coming and saying, don't forget to take your Athala power with you. in order to do that. So fabulous. So fabulous, wonderful, bright blessings to all of you. Thank you so much to all of you who came here live and stayed for the stay and play section of Magic in Mind. It has been wonderful to see you all. Enjoy this waning moon week. Enjoy claiming of that power of the healer. And I look forward to seeing you next week. A reminder that this is the perfect time if you're not already a member of Suna's Star Wheel and you want to really harness the energy of the lunar cycle. You can do that. We will be having a new issue of Suna's Star Wheel coming out. So you'll be able to see all of those planetary movements and get some support and feeling into that. The energy of the month ahead, that is available to you. Otherwise, have a wonderful rest of the week, and I will see you next week when we launch our month of the Seer.